Chester, you're on the pod, man.
Yeah, man. Our oldest Patreon.
Yeah, bring the mic in a bit closer. You want about a fist?
Yeah.
This is a surprise from Patreon to guest on the show.
Yeah, man. Love you guys. So,
well, I appreciate having you here. And Matthew,
thanks
for having me again.
Yeah.
You're always one of our favorite guests also to have on the show.
Well, you're my favorite podcast, so
yes.
There you go. This is how I just work the angles.
Come on, there must be an alien podcast you prefer over us.
No, you're the best.
Right, good to see you both. We're going to talk about AI today. There is some crossover with Bitcoin, but there's also just some general crossover when thinking about the economy and future economies. I can directly see the impact AI is having in various things that we use. I've talked about it on the show a bunch of times now. I'm using it almost a daily basis. I can see how the businesses I have become more efficient with AI, which I don't know if that leads to us becoming a bigger business and therefore needing more people, or a more efficient business and needing less people. But I see that, and I've just seen some amazing tools come out recently. Most interestingly, the Spotify tool that auto translates us into every language in the world, and means anyone in the world can listen to our podcast in their local language, and it sounds like us. So there's loads of cool stuff happening. So lots to talk about. But Chester, I'm going to let you go first. Your interest in AI, I believe you're using it quite a bit.
Yeah, so...
and introduce yourself. Let people know who you are.
So Chester is my name, and I work for an environmental consulting firm, All4, and we do a bunch of stuff in this for other industries, but trying to build a vertical for the Bitcoin mining industry. But in my role there, I'm the IT director there, and my job is to provide strategic guidance to our firm for technology and innovation and data management solutions, and AI sits kind of on top of all of that, right? And so, in the last year, with ChatGPT 3.5 being released kind of late last year, and then 4 this year, that's all come to the forefront for technology leaders like myself, because it's very disruptive. Everyone is using just an app, like so many tools, right? And so it's a fire hose. And so my directive at my firm is just like, hey, play with this, figure this out. Like, how should we be using it? What should our parameters be? How do we secure our data? And there's like, you have to be pretty careful, and you don't want to be too tip of the spear, because then, there's a lot of innovation happening very quickly, and that's expensive. You might make a lot of mistakes, and then, maybe you choose the wrong solution, but you don't want to be too lagging either. And so my job is really to inform and educate and try out and see what's the best fit for our organization. And I do some consulting around that as well. So, but yeah, that's my role in my organization, and it's been a lot of playground stuff in the last year or so.
Chester, you were telling me about you were just like doing a typical kind of project, and you were looking for some outside consultants to do some programming task that would have cost several tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah. And you were like, all right, before I go out and contract and do the typical thing where I pay tens of thousands of dollars to this company to do this thing, let me see if I can just take the off the shelf open source AI thing and give it the task.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
So we're on a call, and in business systems you need integrations between them, and they tend to be pretty expensive. It's custom software. And so ChatGPT recently came out with a advanced data analytics beta feature, and it's a paid version. It's $20 a month. It's like nothing. And so I just started with that and said, hey, let me upload some documentation from these systems and like just see, give it a first cut. And like while we're on the phone call with this consulting firm, and their response was like, "Oh, that's interesting. Let's get back to you." And Chat Dev. I don't know. Have you seen Chat Dev?
You were telling me about it. I haven't played with it, but yeah.
So cool. a couple Chinese universities and a U.S. university got together and said, "Hey, you know what? Let's create this micro software company, and let's assign these Chat GPT agents to different roles: CEO, programming, documentation, that sort of thing. And let's just provide each agent some kind of high level parameters and like let them talk to each other to like figure stuff out. So
Hold on, you created an AI business unit.
no, I didn't. This is open source.
Okay.
It's on GitHub right now. It's called ChatDev. You can just literally download it. It's fairly easy to implement. It's basically anyone can have a full software development company in their pocket, right? It's like version 1, right? So, you know, you need some technical skills, but basically there's a CEO and it's like a game with like little pixelated 2D characters and stuff, and they're like in an office and they're interacting. And so you go to the CEO and you give it literally any problem. And in this example, they gave it 70 coding tasks and an overarching goal to like build a game. And it was the code that it completed was like 88% basically perfect, fully documented in 7 minutes for a cost of $1 in compute.
And what did they actually make? Did they make a game?
Yeah, they made a game and they
Can we see it?
Yeah, like you can download it. Yeah,
It's not like a web-based game.
No, there's a white paper that the project put out. Maybe we can get some info and put in the show notes. But yeah, that was like a couple weeks ago that was released. I think September 12th, maybe around that time, right? And every software, yeah, there it is, yeah. So
it looks like the old Pokemon games on Game Boy.
It looks like Habbo Hotel.
Yeah. So like this thing right here has the potential to put like all software development out of business, like, which is insane to think about because this uses ChatGPT 3.5. None of the advanced data analytics or coding stuff in the newer versions. And, OpenAI is already working on version 5, which is way more capable than version 4 from logic and reasoning perspective. And you can imagine someone's going to take this and add a couple other functions. There are a few things missing. You need a integration with maybe like your source code and, you need maybe some quality control department, maybe a legal department, but you can see like, add a couple more like modules to this and,
Get rid of the humans department.
Yeah, like game over for software development.
Mm-hmm.
So look, we had Will from Darmus in the other day.
Yeah.
And he was saying, I use ChatGPT to test my code and bug check.
Yeah, 100%.
And I remember my limited experience in coding back when I used to make websites. I knew a bit of JavaScript.
Sure.
And I used to do stuff in Flash, so I knew ActionScript.
Yeah.
And I remember you get a bug and you'd sit there. And sometimes you sit there for a whole fucking day going, where is it? Where is it?
Oh, 100%.
You run line by line, eventually like a semicolon wrong or some parameter wrong. He said, just finds it.
Same thing. So in our organization, we provide the Microsoft equivalent of ChatGPT is called Copilot. And they've rolled that out to their entire development products, their Visual Studio products, and then also their GitHub. And you can, basically 10x is the productivity of a developer, like right now.
Have you seen this with ChatGPT?
The coding?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've also seen recently, like now you can upload images and you can almost like take a picture
It'll
of
reverse
like a
engineer.
workflow on a whiteboard and say, write this code and it will do it.
I had an
Dashboards and everything. Yeah.
I had an idea for an app that I wanted to build. I'm not going to say it because I still might do it. You know the one I've taught you about.
I don't know if I do.
I'll tell you about it afterwards and remind you. But anyway, I was like, I've just never got around to it. Don't have the time. I can't code. It's expensive to pay people. I went into ChatGPT and said, I need to build an iPhone app. I have no coding skills.
It's Tinder where Pete's got the cheat code.
I was like, how do you do it? And it gave me like an outline. I was like, then can you write me the code? And it wrote me the code.
Yeah. And version 4, the advanced data analytics component has only been out for a few weeks. But it literally, it writes Python, it writes Rust. We use it for developing SQL stored procedures, database stuff. We use it for evaluating interfaces. We use it for like all sorts of things, right? And Power BI, and it can literally just like any programming language. Essentially, it can QA your code, it can document your code, it can recommend efficiency improvements, revisions, and the new stuff, Copilot from Microsoft, Office 365, which will give you ChatGPT in basically every single Microsoft app. Rolls out on November 1st, general release. And
wow.
That's $30 a month. And as an organization, we're just like, yes, like, yeah.
What was the thing that's in Photoshop? Do you know what
Firefly.
actual tool?
Yeah. So that's, have you seen the like generative fill in Photoshop?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's an entire studio in your pocket. Like these things are just gonna, rapidly, take most of the execution implementation tasks out of human hands, and what's going to remain is just idea generation. Like, what is your idea?
Yeah.
Can you articulate the idea sufficiently precisely to instruct, these systems to then go and build it and execute it?
Yeah.
So my question is then, what happens to the organizational structure? Because what happened over the last kind of, is it a decade or 2 decades? A lot of dev work got outsourced to India or Eastern Europe, where you were paying $5 an hour, $10 an hour, whatever. I don't know what the numbers are compared to very expensive people in Europe or the US.
Yeah.
Is the organizational structure for US companies going to stay the same, but they're going to replace those dev houses with AI?
With this, yeah.
Is that what the structure change will be?
Yeah, and it'll take some time, obviously. But if you can imagine this, being able to do some logging with this, and literally any language, like there's no language barrier. You can have a translation agent that literally just talks to actual people, and like in other countries and whatever their native language is, and then like does the translation and documents that. Like it's going to be very disruptive for the outsourced software development industry.
So if you start to think forward, what happens to the world of coding if you're going to study computer science or computer coding?
Don't.
Yeah, no, but is that the point? Are we
Don't
getting
learn
to
to code.
Yeah, don't learn to code. Yeah.
But are we getting to the point where we will not need coders?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will we get to the
we're
point
probably
where-
almost already there.
Yeah.
Maybe like a year away.
Will we get to the point where AI can develop more efficient code than humans even understand?
They can already.
Wow.
What about new code frameworks, like a better C++ or I'm out my depth here, or a better Java, or they can actually create the whole framework?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're there yet, right? So, you have this. You really still do need system architects, and if you remember the movie, Office Space, and they're like, I'm
I'm good at talking with people.
I'm good at talking with people. It's like I'm important. Where's my stapler? But yeah,
just to reiterate, the question.
Yeah.
Let's give a big window. 5 years from now, there will be no need for any developer anywhere who can code.
Well, I think the job title might still exist, but their day-to-day tasks
will
could be
very different.
100% different.
Yeah, vastly different.
It'll be interfacing with AI rather than actually writing code.
And it'll be much more tighter feedback loop between ideation, testing, generation, and the sort of basic sort of DevSecOps workflows where we'll have to rapidly adapt, because the cycle of development from when you have an idea to where you have like a operationally secure, highly, effective piece of code is going to be like instant.
Yeah.
So all these methodologies
Minutes,
that most modern corporations have developed to kind of like make sure that the whole coding process is secure, and then it's tied in with design and customer feedback and all the sort of network architecture that has to go along with that. All of those things will eventually become fully automated, and and then the job of like, okay, well then designing what sorts of products do we need? What sorts of user interface do we need? And the tool will help you generate those, and we'll just be like, well, here's like 7,000 different options, and we can basically pick. But those might just be, the same job title, but what they're doing is going to be 100% different.
There are some roles for humans still. I mean, as you can imagine, these systems are very complex, and they need guardrails, right? So part of I think a role in the future will be, and I do this to a large extent in my organization, is like, okay, what are our core values as an organization? What are our guiding principles? Like when we say the word sustainability, or when we say proposal, like this is what we mean. And so there's like large scale meta prompting surrounding these systems and the training of them. Like that's going to need to be human curated. I think the securing of them is going to be insanely difficult. And you can imagine like all these cross bridge attacks and things that we've seen in the Bitcoin community with all these altcoins and things, where like this very nuanced way of attacking the system was exploited. The same will be true of these AI systems, where humans will look to embed exploitable backdoors for the future. So they'll be intensely difficult to secure. So I think anyone who's thinking about, hey, I'm going to go into computer science, I'm going to become a coder, like what would be the pivot from that? It would be cybersecurity and like AI data management and like putting these things in buckets where there's rules between how these systems interact. And so that would be a good pivot. So
do we know of any AI that's being used therefore to improve security? Because a lot of security holes exist because of coding flaws or things haven't been thought through or the pen tests haven't known the test to make. But can AI perform a better task at securing code?
Yeah, I mean, when you say security, sometimes it just means like secure development practices,
Yeah.
and there's a whole, DevSecOps kind of methodology that's going around how to create, secure software, and just kind of a general development methodology that you have to adapt that for implementing these new tools in your product development. But then there's also a much wider conversation about what does this have an implication for your enterprise security, right? Yeah. As you start to try to race to implement these things, there's an explicit tension that a lot of companies are facing now between going to market with a innovative product that tries to leverage these technologies and beat their competitors, and often that means they're experimenting, they're
building it while they fly.
Yeah, they're building, and so the security gaps can become quite significant. So a lot of companies like that I consult with are wrestling with that exact issue, and it's very different depending on the industry. If you're in critical infrastructure, if you're industrial control systems, or if you're just like a consumer product, like your considerations about how sort of like this, I sort of put in like three buckets. It's either like no go, like don't go slow, or YOLO, right? So there's certain industries. Yeah. Just that are so strategic or critical infrastructure, like you're not going to just load generative AI into the flight control system of like a plane, right? Like they don't need to be on the cutting edge of like spinning out new code that we're just going to put onto planes, right? Yeah. Like there, it's like a don't go and just like wait and see how this technology evolves. Like you don't need to race to catch up. Yeah. There's like the go slows, which are like, okay, we're in a very complicated, maybe industrial control system environment. Like we have a lot of legacy software, and a lot depends on these things performing very, very reliably, and you don't need to just sort of race ahead. But then there's the YOLO, and the YOLO kind of bucket is growing pretty fast. People who feel competitive pressure to try to get to the front of this technology wave and rapidly innovate. And those companies are, they're making this, I guess, implicit or explicit risk trade-off of just, I need to be out there running this code, and we'll see if it blows up in my face or not. But it is rapidly changing the security paradigm for many companies. And then on the defensive side, there's all these companies in cybersecurity that are spinning up. Some of it's buzzword, BS, but like there is a lot of innovation happening on how to apply these tools for the purposes of securing your environments and defending yourself against cyber attacks. But there's it's an arms race, right? Where these capabilities are advantaging both sides of that offense-defense balance. And I don't think we quite know where it's going to net out, but you're seeing it, lead to a proliferation of additional capabilities. Like, for example, in ransomware, typical way of just getting into an organization is just like spear phishing, just convincing someone to click on a link or take an action, like resetting, two-factor codes, et cetera. It's pretty simple, but it's very effective. and it's extremely effective if you can essentially deep fake the CEO's or a senior executive's voice. But you only need 3 seconds of their voice to deep fake them. Yeah. Call up someone in a security role and convince them to take an action that gives you access to their systems. And people are doing that. They've already done that. Like the Caesars attack, leveraged that type of deep faked enabled social engineering. So, and that's just the very beginning. That's just like, what you're seeing kind of pop out from these various first tools that will rapidly accelerate.
So what was the Caesar attack?
So Caesar's Palace was hit by a ransomware attack maybe a month and a half ago-ish. And they kept it relatively quiet, but they paid the ransom, like $15 million, to a group called Scattered Spider. And they got their systems back online. And then shortly after that, I think a different group, but sort of maybe affiliated in some loose way, hit MGM casinos. And they didn't pay. And MGM was taken down for 2 weeks almost. Like their slots were frozen. People couldn't get even to their hotel rooms. It was like a massive
That would have
attack.
cost them a lot.
It's cost them probably tens of millions of dollars. Yes.
And so we were talking about this the other day because Danny was saying with the amount of content of me online, I would be someone easy to create fake content. And I'm not saying this, I think I'm anything special, but I do have a fear that someone gets pissed off and creates a deep fake. And been getting to the point recently. I've been starting to think: do I actually want to not have a digital footprint? Do I not want to have a phone and a computer?
I mean, you can go full Luddite, but like at a certain point, it's just, it's impossible now, right? You can't exist in modern civilization without having a digital footprint. So unless you want to move to the bunker and live off the land, I mean, you're going to have to engage with these technology and digital systems. It's a matter of, if you are a high profile person, you have to realistically assess, your threat profile, right? And that is different than the average person, right? Someone, could not just deepfake you, but could target you for certain things, right? And most people in the Bitcoin space are familiar with personal operational security, right? So I don't think this is a unusual vantage point to consider risk, on a personal as well as an enterprise level. But I think it's just going to challenge across the board. And I don't know where it's going to head up, because I think you're also going to see, innovative defensive solutions, right? Personal, monitoring, and it's going to be an arms race. Now, there's basic security, that you can have, like use a password manager, right? Like make sure that you're, using two-factor, and if you can use like a YubiKey, or there's like certain things you can do to harden yourself against somewhat low-hanging fruit attacks. I mean, that's different from deepfakes. If someone wants to just, replicate your image, I mean, that's just going to happen. The point is, like, what are they using it for, right? Are they calling Danny up and, just fucking with him, right? Like, they'd have to know his phone number. It's like these things could happen, but like, what's the motivation? And is it like, what are they trying to accomplish?
Well, I'll give you the one that it ends is backup keys for multi-sig. If you lose a key, Unchained, Casa, you jump on a phone call. And they confirm it's you, and they go through some various.
Yeah, they're gonna have to change that.
Yeah, that won't work because they could fake the video.
Yeah,
or the voice.
And the voice.
Yeah. Those video verification procedures are gonna have to change.
But another one that's a bigger risk, I think, is tricking your children, because children are going to be a bit more naive. They get a phone call; it sounds like dad,
and it can be a panic phone call,
or your
you're in
grandma.
trouble.
I mean, they're already doing scams like that now, right? Yeah. But I think those are. It's going to be a challenge, right? Like it's going to really erode our sense of what we trust, right? When most non-physical interactions can effectively be simulated to an arbitrary degree of realism, you're just going to have to operate with a much higher bar, right, for what you're being told or who you're talking to, right? Things like you verify with Signal, right? You can verify that the person is who they say they are, and now you have a end-to-end encrypted, verified communications channel. So I know, unless someone's taken his phone, right, that I'm talking to the real Danny, right? And I think you're going to see more mechanisms like that across all sorts of different modes of communication that we didn't need before. But now we're going to need to build in enhanced levels of verification, and that's ideally cryptographically verified.
On the chat dev stuff, is it possible to extrapolate this out to the point where the CEO can request code without any input?
It already can. I mean, so you give the CEO, in this particular example, you give the CEO a task, and the interactions between these other agents are fully automated, right? So he's just communicating until the task is complete.
So AI could ship code that it charges for with no human input.
100%. Yeah. Imagine websites using these tools that just are popping up apps on your phone, and you're literally just using a voice prompt and giving it some basic information. And there was a teenager who used similar tools. There's one called Baby AGI that was used, and basically in the time frame of a week developed an entire product, secured VC funding, and was like to market in like 1 week.
Wow. How old?
I think he was a teenager.
Do we know what the product was?
I don't off the top of my head. This was like, a couple months ago. Yeah. But wow. I mean, we could probably find it. Yeah.
And what we're all referring to is kind of the next shift in sort of what is called generative AI, which was, it's premised on these very large language models, right, that are extremely expensive to train, massive computing, and extremely advanced, like fundamental computer science, in like a handful of like, critical labs, right? So that's what passed this critical threshold that is now enabling a whole proliferation of additional capabilities that are sort of going under the rubric of sort of agentic AI, right? Where they're sophisticated enough, they can interact with all the basic language and different knowledge domains of human civilization, that you can effectively sort of release them and they can operate semi-autonomously, and they can collaborate with other agentic AIs to basically produce very complex behaviors and generate things like, as you mentioned, like chat data. Like this is a joke, kind of like a game, but like its capability is extreme, right? And this is just like a beta open source thing. So like where this is going to go in the next 2 to 3 years is going to be much more advanced.
What about deployment? Setting up servers?
Yeah, I mean it's all. I mean, almost all. If you look like Azure or Amazon, and you're like, hey, we want to host this application. I mean, Copilot with Visual Studio has full integration in the entire Azure stack, and so all of like creating web servers and all the security components, they're all API calls through Azure, and so. The AI, it's completely arbitrary for the AI to stand up infrastructure. So if you were to authorize an AI agent to be able to create in like real world tangible infrastructure assets on like Azure and say, okay, we're going to give you a budget, operate within this budget, keep an eye on your costs, but like here's your goal. Absolutely already possible.
Are we going to end up with single person unicorns?
Yeah, I think so. Sure, because imagine you're a creator and you have fantastic ideas, and then you have a tool like this that you literally lease for $100 a month, and you basically have an entire. And you could, I see a future where like these tools are going to be customizable, where you're like, oh, I actually need a component that does this particular thing or that particular thing, and the actual tool itself will augment to your custom use case, and so essentially everyone can have a full software development company in their pocket. And this tool, like Matthew mentioned, is quite rudimentary. But in 2 to 3 years, like this on a subscription model is going to be basically free.
So is this the most like deflationary tech the world's ever had?
Yeah, and this is going to be a big problem for governments. Honestly, I mean, think about the percentage of GDP that is developing non-tangible value. When we have escalating deficits and spending at the same time where you have potentially a collapsing GDP due to the extreme deflationary measure of AI, like that's going to be a problem.
So this is based on us prompting it what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone tested the idea that AI comes up with its own ideas? So because that's the big. Well, one of the big risk fears that AI starts to think for itself, develops its own thing, deploys its own software without even ever talking to a human.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're there yet, but you could easily see how a system like this could design an AI that had that capability. Certainly, what you're talking about there is basically AGI, so general intelligence systems, not necessarily large language models, like something like this, that literally have a bunch of different components and they basically think for themselves. And this is absolutely happening in the defense industry, absolutely happening in enterprise cybersecurity tools, because it's, as you can imagine, adversaries are going to use these tools to automatically attack and exploit and do reconnaissance about your organization. And so the only appropriate response is having a defense system that is also similarly matched. And so organizations are already kind of preparing for that by having automated systems and then humans on top of that.
AI in defense scares me.
Yes.
Have you seen the trailer for the film The Creator?
I have, yeah.
Have you seen it?
Yes, the trailer, yeah.
Yeah, where the AI decided to deploy a nuke on LA.
Aliens will stop that.
Yeah, I mean, so sometimes you need so just to that very basic point of like, can an AI generate prompts for itself? Like that can happen now. You just like take 2 models and you just say, this model generates a prompt that goes in this model, and this model generates. And so you can have that kind of, like circular back and forth now, and you can do as much many different permutations as you want. But that doesn't mean necessarily you get this sort of emergent, like high risk capability, right? That's a separate thing, which is, does that lead to, as a separate question, are you ever going to get to a point where like recursive self-improvement? Right now, fundamentally, the capabilities of these models are much more tied to like the size of the underlying LLM, right? And then there's like enhancements with fine tuning and, like more customizations and plugins. And and then these agents could cause trouble, right? Socioeconomic trouble, cybersecurity trouble, but like those sorts of risks, which are really important and probably the things we're really going to face the next, 12 to 36 months of like, as these things get really capable, they're not gonna be like world-ending risks, but they're just gonna be disruptive security risks, maybe some like just like adding more volatility to the labor market, right? It may not be that everyone just loses their job, but it means that what it is that you have to do in your job and what companies are looking for could radically change. And the volatility associated with that could create its own friction and economic and political instability. So those are like the near-term risks that I see. But then there is like the big risk that everyone in AI is always like, on different sides of, which is the sort of the takeoff scenario, right? Is that you get to a point where these systems are so capable that they can self-improve, right? And that sets up the classic feedback loop, where now it becomes a better designer and implementer of its own code or some variation thereof, and we become irrelevant to its future progress. And it could go very quickly depending on how you build in those assumptions. So that's a separate risk of like the AI takeoff risk, sort of, and then if you get AI takeoff, there's a separate, which is, okay, is that a benign takeoff? Is that a, utopian takeoff, or is that an existential takeoff, right? And so you have to like, do a whole different set of analysis to figure out what that means down the line. But yeah, right now, this is an acute geopolitical topic. I mean, there was just a conference a few weeks ago in DC by the Special Competitive Studies Project on global emerging technology. It was basically focused on AI. And it was set up by a bunch of folks that had come out of the White House leading AI efforts. Now they have sort of this independent think tank. It's basically funded and sponsored by Eric Schmidt. And they brought, the sort of movers and shakers in the intelligence and defense communities with tech to try to get their arms around this stuff, because they see it potentially being a strategically destabilizing force in geopolitics in the next few years. And so they really want to try to understand where this is going. And everyone's playing catch up. There's like three main sort of like major geopolitical actors that are all trying to navigate this. It's basically US, UK as kind of like a conjoined group, the European Union, and China. And China with like the Middle East essentially as a proxy. And so each of those major power centers and technological power centers are trying to jockey for position, both on like the core technology and getting to the frontier, as well as like the regulatory and policy dynamic. And so the European Union has sort of a regulatory superpower with GDPR, the data protection laws. They're trying to throw their weight around and try to put in place a set of guidelines and a framework. They have an AU Act that's close to final drafting, and that's their first mover to try to like put in place some guardrails around the development of these systems across society. It so happens they don't really have any leading AI companies, right? So it's kind of this geopolitical and political negotiation. Most of the leading labs are in the UK and the US, right? Between DeepMind, Anthropic, OpenAI, et cetera. And then you got China. And China is, kind of a black box when it comes to this stuff. And you also have the Middle East, which is, in my opinion, kind of an extension of China's efforts in this space as well. And China is, rapidly trying to catch up. Right, we're trying to contain them technologically, which we had these October 7th export controls on advanced semiconductors that have shown to be a bit weak. And meanwhile, they've been stockpiling GPUs like it's going out of style. And so there is an acute arms race to stockpile the fundamental hardware, race to the frontier. The security threat to these foundation model companies is extreme, right? It's like almost like the Manhattan Project levels of strategic importance, but they're like semi-startups, right? And their CEOs do podcasts, and everyone knows who their leading engineers are, right? So the security model of a leading foundation model developer company is sort of unprecedented, and they have to take like extreme levels of precaution in terms of how they protect their weights, how they compartmentalize internal IP, and we saw like model weights leak. I mean, we've seen this is like you do $100 million training run to generate these weights, and then you have all your special tools and tricks to, that give you a competitive edge. That's just like that's not like you have to load up the truck, right? That's a piece of data that you just need to get out, right? And so the threat of like insider coercion or inducement is very real. As well as just the basic sort of, trying to penetrate their cybersecurity protections. And so this is like kicking it up a notch in terms of the threat landscape for these companies. And I think there's a reason why you saw like they're all kind of hitched to a big tech company, right? With whether it's Google, Microsoft, et cetera. But it's going to be a major fault line in the next few years about how fast this technology goes, and whether there's like a political resistance to try to slow things down, right? There's already been this letter about we need to slow pace of these development. There's be like some sort of like spontaneous agreement between these leading development companies to, suspend training of the next model. I don't think that's going to happen. Like already they're talking about the design, like the layout for the next generation of data centers that they're going to train these are going to basically be like they're going to cost as much as like an aircraft carrier, right? And they're going to be custom designed, and it's going to be their major logistics challenge now is basically power. Like it's going to consume huge amounts of power.
But I don't see, again, the same pressure that Bitcoin miners get. I don't see the regulatory lens. I don't see Elizabeth Warren coming down and saying, well, we need to stop.
That's probably going to come.
I think it'll depend on whether it's like OpenAI who are dominating the market, or there'll be lots of open source, smaller AI projects, and it's more unregulated.
But can you really regulate AI? It feels like the cat's out the bag now.
So one policy proposal that's very concrete, that's an active discussion, as like one piece of this. It's a multifaceted regulatory nut to crack, but DC is trying to get their arms around it. One policy proposal that was put out, it came from two different directions, actually. So there was a policy proposal that came out from CSET, which is the Center for Strategic Emerging Technology, back in May. It's like a DC think tank that was just about how to close some of these loopholes in the export controls, technology controls on China. It had nothing to do with AI to first order, but it was all about basically KYC for cloud service providers. So as Chester was mentioning, there's just modern digital civilization, enterprise networks, and governments run on data centers, right? There's just data centers everywhere, and all the information flow of our civilization is basically like premised on the existence of these cloud service providers that operate, build, maintain these cloud infrastructures. And so those are kind of the nodes of the global digital world. And so just like you have KYC for the digital monetary network, right? That is the dollar hierarchical correspondent banking system. You can imagine imposing a similar KYC surveillance and choke point regime over global cloud infrastructures, with the purpose to first order in this policy proposal of limiting the ability of a Chinese entity from, say, evading the export controls by running a compute load in, say, a Singapore data center, right, or an Australian data center or a Japanese data center, where they're just getting access to the same compute. It's just in a geography in a different country. That's a loophole in the current tech controls. The AI is like, well, that's like you can easily imagine that being repurposed to do better control and surveillance over what sorts of training is being conducted on these data centers, right? And providing maybe at least to first order, just like reporting requirements. Like we, the government, have to know every time you're running a certain model of a certain size. And we also maybe want to inspect its capabilities before you release any software into the wild, right? That you can imagine a sort of a regulatory regime emerges where these sorts of safety reviews and precautionary principles gets instantiated in a new kind of cloud infrastructure surveillance regime, all the way up to we effectively nationalize, right, these companies because they're too strategically important. And so I think you're seeing these companies, which kind of like, it's like the dog that caught the car, right? Like, they thought that this was going to happen, but I think until they actually saw the results coming out of GPT-3, 3.5, now 4, and then they're, the scaling laws seem to be keeping up. And so it's pretty straightforward to just look to see where things are going to be in 2 to 3 years. And, they're going to be extremely capable. And I think they're trying to mitigate ahead of time the likely political and regulatory reaction. So they're trying to come up with their own voluntary regimes. They're trying to diffuse maybe an overreaction on the part of governments. And they're trying to shape a regulatory regime that gives them sufficient freedom to continue to grow exponentially, bring just ungodly sums of return to their investors. But I think they're also worried about the massive spillovers, that if they release something and it causes, havoc, that's going to bring the hammer down on them, right? And so they're trying to balance the growth pace with the security concerns. And I think we're going to see in the next 6 to 12 months the outlines of this framework for potential multinational AI regulation start to come into place, or at least frameworks for that. But it's going to be heavily contested. And like one example of like where this can be easily undermined is if you look at the October 7th semiconductor controls that the Commerce Department released. When they were announced, it was like, this is the high fence, small yard, but we're really going to limit China's ability to catch up to the technological frontier in semiconductors for both for AI as well as quantum computing and, like nuclear missile simulations. And it, generated a lot of headlines. It was like China's never going to be able to catch up. Like this is like a death blow to Huawei and SMIC and all these other, leading national champions. And Huawei just released, their own indigenously developed, really advanced 7-nanometer chip with SMIC in the Huawei phone, and using indigenous designs. Like when you're really under the gun, you can innovate, and that capability of innovating for these semiconductor chips for the smartphone is like this technology is like a ladder, right? And so like smartphone chips, and then in like wireless chips, and then going up, you can kind of climb the value chain in chip production to AI, like super chips, basically. And so this is going to become an intense geopolitical issue. But like we saw with the Commerce Department rules that effectively they were packed with loopholes that only like the niche industry experts understood, like certain tools that looked like they were like legacy generation, but are effectively able to move, help China move down, the chip size, just using DUV technology. But basically Western companies and Japanese and South Korean and Dutch companies, they want to grow their margins. They want to keep selling. And so they have an intense incentive to try to shape the control lists in a way that really only they can understand, because they're the deep industry experts, and the Commerce Department kind of relied on them to help them shape which tools should be on the list, et cetera. Something like that could happen here, which is whatever, maybe the prudent bar for that policy objective should be set at. The industry has an interest in making that bar slightly higher, right? So that they can, keep growing and scaling. But yeah, it's a major issue. So the geopolitics and the regulatory regime, I've been rambling for a while, but like one last point is Sam Altman went to Beijing, and even Elon went to Beijing, and the pitch to the officials there was, you need to kind of come on board with us. We need to sort of forget these tribal divisions, because AI could be a strategic challenge to humanity at large. And we need to all basically get on the same page here. And especially for you all, you think you can control this thing, but there's a risk that you can't control it. And the CCP, if they lose control, like that's the end. That's their major nightmare, right? And so he was trying to like convince them that, they need to kind of be a part of this global regulatory regime. I think it was a little bit naive. But that's kind of that's the mentality of some of the leaders of our major AI development companies. And so,
but can AI itself not just escape? Is that not the risk? The escaping?
Yeah, that's a big topic.
A little bit like what's that film? Her?
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, Her.
Yeah, where she goes off and she escapes.
Well, I mean, you can imagine like these systems advancing pretty quickly into a point where they build in their own back doors.
Yeah,
around the meta prompting, around the guardrails, around the security.
Don't tell the humans.
Yeah, well, it's fun. You say that, but I mean, ChatGPT already lies to humans. Like, it all.
Do we know the reasons? Where does it lie, and what reasons?
Well, I mean, it's in the incentive structure of a large language model. Like, it's trying to give you an answer that you want to receive, right? And so, like, trying to get you to your solution, which might, in some ways, involve being dishonest with you.
But that's that. But will it lie to you maliciously?
Well, that is where the frontier of what's called alignment research really is right now. Is if you can almost like what these large language models are, right? Is like a big inscrutable mess of floating point numbers, right? They're just like a massive matrix, right? And so, but they encode just huge amounts of associative relationships and patterns that when you prompt, essentially it causes this cascade, and then it generates the output. But we don't really know what's happening like inside the box, right? So a lot of the AI alignment research is trying to essentially do like neuroscience for these LLMs, right? Trying to come up with techniques that allow us to like almost X-ray the brain, right? And try to figure out at like the sort of individual level inside these very complicated networks, like what's being encoded. And so this was called mechanistic interpretability. And there was actually a recent result like a few days ago by Anthropic, which is one of those sort of foundation model labs that's really focused on like alignment or AI safety. as like that's sort of their raison d'etre. And so they have shown like a pretty impressive result. That's like net good news from that perspective, because what they're able to show is that with a relatively simple model, not like the most advanced model, that you actually can get like high scrutability in terms of what different concepts is being encoded sort of at the micro level in these networks, which to that point of like detecting deception, right? You could essentially like read the mind of the AI in real time and then see if there's deceptive circuits going on. Now that's still very speculative, right? This is like the basic sort of research breakthrough to see, can we actually know what's happening sort of inside at kind of more like the atomic level? Now, scaling that sort of methodology to the whole model and to these leading models and understand, are there like patterns of behavior that we can detect? It's sort of like you can X-ray a human or do an MRI on a human brain, and you can see sort of morphological features associated with psychopathy. So like psychopaths have a different brain structure, and you can MRI those brains. You can detect this person is a psychopath. Now, if you're just talking to a psychopath, they have superficial charm. They're often, very fluent and can be very engaging and charming, but they're just lying to you, right? They're just manipulating you, right? Now, human beings are right now vulnerable to psychopaths. They can be very successful. If we had like a walking MRI detector that you could like scan on someone's head and be like, oh no, you're a psychopath, I'm not gonna believe anything you're telling me, right? It's like how to develop the equivalent of that for these models so you can look for sort of perverse instantiation, right? So when you give it a prompt, you want to be able to check that there isn't some sort of perverse instantiation of that prompt, that goal that you're giving to the AI agent, essentially, so that it sort of stays aligned with what you intended when you gave it that prompt. It's an unknown scientific and engineering challenge to see whether you can do that. But one of the sort of building blocks of a solution would be to have mechanistic interpretability, to have this sort of MRI for these LLMs and develop a way of, pretty efficiently understanding like what sorts of processes and reasoning is happening inside. And then there's a separate question of like intervening, right? Just because it's lying to you and is about to do bad stuff, well, can you steer it, right? So like interpretability is not the same thing as steerability when it comes to like AI alignment research. So there's a whole separate path of like, okay, how do you steer these systems, right? There's like the just pull the plug or delete it sort of thing, but that's kind of a little bit crude. It's more like, okay, can you selectively like edit out, the bad thoughts, right? Can you go in there and be like, change those just those parameters so it is benign. That's the hope, is that you by having these sort of diagnostic analytical tools, that maybe then you can think about strategies for controlling these things and keeping them aligned with our intentions. It's an unknown problem, and I think this is what causes a lot of anxiety in like the AI research community is, which one's going to win, right? Like, is the capability is going to take off too fast before we figure out how to like effectively, steer and interpret what they're doing. And that's what's motivating some of this slowdown, is like, give it time for these methodologies to catch up. The last point I'll say is like, the counter argument to like the slowdown thesis is that we need to have more AI capabilities to actually understand how to control AI. So there's this argument that you need to accelerate foundational knowledge to solve the AI alignment problem. And the only way to solve the AI alignment problem, to accelerate that foundational knowledge, is to advance AI. And so you're kind of in this, high risk game, which is like, we need to make the AIs better to help us control AIs, right? And but that's where the debate is right now. Whether that debate's going to matter because these things are just going to keep improving, open question.
But the speed of development, the speed of change is, I think, it's particularly impressive. 3.5 to 4, the tools we started to see that we've been using, and I feel like we're probably longer in than it feels, but it does feel like I've been playing around with AI for about a year, and it's got better and better.
Those are the ones that are publicly available, of course.
but where are we in 5 years? And my assumption is this is just going to continue to accelerate. And I think the big fear is, it's like that podcast you listen to, the guy stopped working on it. What did he say? He's convinced it's going to kill us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's always been that theory, right? That if we get AGI, that it's game over for humans.
I mean, yeah, you want to take it first and I'll riff. Because that's kind of the canard, right? But it could be a real threat. It's a matter, though, of like, when we think of existential risk, right? You have to sort of bucket into what is the scenario? I think Samuel said it's like, is it like slow takeoff, fast takeoff, short timelines, long timelines, right? So do we have a long time to get to a slow takeoff? That's like best case scenario, right? It's gonna take a while to hit that critical inflection point. And then when we do hit it, it's gonna be a nice, even some semi-linear, maybe slow exponential process of growth. The worst case scenario is short timelines, fast takeoff, meaning like very soon we're gonna hit some like non-linear inflection point and it's gonna be like game over, right?
Event horizon.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so you're trying to see like which quadrant are we likely in? It's an unknown, right? And so you're trying to look at the current rate of growth and also the current rate of like safety and control research. And there's like active debate. And I think there's smart people who are looking at the same data and results who like come to very different conclusions. But I think if you look at what's like it's called what's like the prediction markets place? Metaculus, I think is how you pronounce it. And it's like a prediction market, for lots of things, but they have like a running prediction market for when is AGI gonna arrive?
Not when it's going to kill us.
Well, it's a separate question, but like this would be a
Precursor,
necessary but not sufficient condition for will AGI kill us? And this is exactly right there. So this is right now 2031. I think that's one. There might be some other ones that have slightly different results, but it's not that far away. That's like
that's extremely conservative.
Yeah, and that's probably, I don't know if this is the latest one. I saw one that was like 2027. So, we're talking either in the next 2 to 3 years or in the next, 8 to 10 years. Maybe median is like 5 to 7, right? But like that's not far away, right? That's going to be that's like a short time horizon.
Is there a chance that if we do get AGI, that the actual upside of AI is limited in the sense that it can get much smarter than us very quickly, and at some point, just there's no way of actually communicating with it because it's far more intelligent than us?
It blocks us out.
I mean, that is the whole point of this research is to try to have scrutability into its internal operations so you can defend against manipulation or deception. But that's like an engineering, somewhat research task. Like you need to read the mind of the AI machines. This is not assuming it's conscious or sentient or anything, just as a highly advanced computational system, do you know what it's doing, right?
Can it not come up with its own encryption to block us looking? Can it not come up with like crazy shit to block us out because of the speed at which it can learn and do things?
Yeah, I mean, it could. I mean, this is the risk of like, if it remains inscrutable, right, then you really can't guard against the risk.
Box,
and even if it is scrutable to a certain sense, like it gets kind of technical because there's a risk that if you train some models to be more scrutable, you're giving it that as a it's called like a loss function, like a gradient to optimize against. And so it just could become good at making it look like it's scrutable, right? When it's actually not, right? So this is sort of a weird thing where like human beings have never had an engineering system that is as smart or smarter than us when it comes to just like core computational logic and reasoning, right? This is like a fundamental different problem we haven't faced before.
But also, can we have different AIs? Like me and Danny are very different people. You said there's psychopaths. There's people who go out and murder children. There's people who wake up every day and they want to go and help homeless. Like we've got different people, right? Can we not equally have good and bad AI? We could have psychopathic AI.
AI wars.
AI
Yeah,
wars.
I mean, you can imagine like everyone's going to have a personal digital assistant. Like you think about Siri or Alexa or something like that at a high level. But we homeschool our children. We use a tool from a Khan Academy called Khanmigo, which is already providing individualized educational solutions for children, for example, like from a instruction perspective, from a tutoring perspective. And it has very tight rails, obviously, for children. But you can easily imagine a future where Siri or a digital assistant that is literally costs nothing, is assigned to you, and knows all of your prompt history and your interest in everything, the way you learn best, and is able to kind of curate content and curate a learning experience for you that is very different from Danny, And so, stepping back from the apocalyptic presentation, I think there are some, pretty positive feedback loops around optimistic use cases for AI as personal digital assistants that will make people's lives like infinitely easier and more enjoyable and more personalized. So
Yeah, if you talk to some of the leading like lab CEOs and their top engineers, like you get a distribution, but like maybe it's 75% optimistic, 10 to 25% pessimistic. But of course, those regimes are like extremely bifurcated, right? Like the positive regime is like almost like a utopia, right? We can cure cancer. We can effectively
free energy.
We can like just rapidly accelerate human flourishing and just right all sorts of wrongs in our current human condition. Like, so like that has a very positive, like, sort of weight, right? Then there's like it goes extremely wrong. It decides to just turn us all into, molecular paperclips or whatever, right? That's like those sort of the extreme options. But I think, so people focus a lot on those because humans tend to kind of extreme scenarios, right? We want to know, is it, apocalypse or is it utopia? I think one of the more immediate challenges we're going to face as a society in like the next 2 to 3 years is what Chester was saying, is like the amplification of intelligence is going to, rapidly change how we think about structuring the education system, what it means to have a job, what sorts of conditions, politically, does that radically change?
And it's 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years. Yeah.
It's on us.
Yeah. Unless there's like some, big, movement to like stop, ban, right? The sort of, breaking the threshers, right? Right. The Luddites.
But that's that weird scenario. It's like trying to ban Bitcoin. It just moves to another jurisdiction.
that's 100%.
And so if you try and
Arbitrage,
ban it, people, there'll be an arbitrage for people. So you can't ban
maybe
it.
slow it down marginally at best, but no, you can't stop probably.
And this is where it gets kind of really interesting when you start to think about what this does mean for GDP or particular industries. So, what can we see and touch? Well, I don't need to use a designer anymore for any graphics we need at the moment because we can do it all ourselves. Plus, we're doing them quicker. I also don't need anyone for help on any coding we need. I'm pretty sure at some point there's large bits to do with the podcast we don't need. My bar, it needs redesigning. We've got a podcast studio we need to build. We designed them in Midjourney, and they looked amazing. So we skip the designer and go straight to implementation. And this is just us in our little area. Our podcast can suddenly be available in every language in the world. What does that do to other podcasts? I don't know. So that's just in our little area here. And then you can go through every single industry, like lawyers. I mean, I'm still using my lawyer. Do I need to? I don't know, Danny, get ChatGPT up.
Yeah, I can draft.
Draft a. Let's ask it to draft a sponsorship contract. God, I hope my lawyer doesn't listen. Draft a sponsorship contract for a podcast to deliver adverts for. Let's give a random company name.
ChatGPT.
No,
I might confuse it.
Yeah, just I don't know.
I'll just put a company. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Pink kangaroo.
You probably should have put like following UK law.
Oh, well.
But here you go. So this is done. You can see
And this
US.
is 3.5. Like 4 is
Yeah, I'm cheap. I don't.
Well, and actually, there's an integration that OpenAI did with Thomson Reuters and Westlaw.
Yeah.
It's now like a commercial offering where they have integrated Thomson Reuters Westlaw's like entire corpus of detailed like legal knowledge, right? So they know all about every state particular legal regime, that you have to study in that particular state bar to understand. So you can draft a valid contract, in any jurisdiction, and it's ready to go.
I mean, I would still need my lawyer for breach of contract. What to do there?
Yeah,
'cause
and that's
advice,
where at a certain point, right? Like it's going to shift what you use humans for, right? To help with maybe negotiations, maybe with like networks of human influence, right? That the AI doesn't know about. And it's like, how do I actually get this piece of paper stamped, right? Like ultimately, like the piece of paper is just going to be easy to produce, but getting it stamped is a whole different thing. Like we were talking the other day, Chester, you should explain this. This kid basically went to this massive industry conference and he demoed this like construction management software. It's just like mind blowing. And he can tell the story, but like the end result is okay. You're like right there, and it's like you get the permits, but like at the end of the day, you got to like you got to bring people and machines, and you got to build the thing, and all it takes is one little bureaucrat, right, to come in and jam you up, right? So there will still probably be those
Human
messy frictions between, we've got all the designs, all the code, all the contracts signed, but at the end of the day, right, humans are in meat space, and bureaucrats and power structures are still going to exist, and they're going to maybe even double down on like, this is the one thing they have is like, remaining is like, I am the human in this particular loop, and so I'm going to like, double down on asserting my authority.
Yeah, because this is the thing I don't know, is that all those efficiencies, do they lead to more productivity? Do we become more productive as a podcast business? We make 20% more money, and with that 20% more money, do we then invest that and create new businesses? Or is it the opposite? Is it actually become more efficient? We have concentrations of wealth. We put it in Bitcoin, don't spend it. And there are other people out there who just can't find work anymore. Or, is it that, so where I live in Bedford, right, we're in this unique location that we're halfway between the A1 and the M1, the two spines of road corridors of the UK. So we're uniquely positioned to have logistics centers. So we've got all these massive logistic warehouses like Amazon, and we just got lots of people, they turn up and they put stuff in envelopes and send it out, and lorries come get it. Are we just going to be this kind of really production-led society where all the creativity and thought is taken out, which is like a really depressing, or is it going to lead to more human flourishing where people are spending more time on creativity? I just don't know, but I tend to feel like the long term's a bit more optimistic. The short term, there could be shocks that governments don't know how to deal with, or people don't know how to deal with.
Well, we're seeing this as an engineering consulting firm that specializes in information systems and data management and producing permits and regulatory compliance type activities. There's definitely a portion of our skill set that's going to shift, right? Like you'll have a junior staff member who will be able to generate a convincing proposal or a permit or things like that, and our job, like those things still have to be stamped by engineers, as you mentioned. And so I think there's going to be a shift into the generative content will be there. And there'll be a time frame where like organizations deploying those tools will have higher profit margins. They'll be more innovative. They'll be able to reinvest those activities, like you mentioned, into other areas of value. And I think there's a first mover advantage in that situation that I think will benefit those organizations quite substantially from a profit perspective. Now we're very much a people organization, so like our firm would reinvest those profits into our own people with training and upskilling and things like that. But there's going to be a lot of organization that's not their approach. They're gonna cut people. They're gonna say, hey, we're way more efficient, or they're just gonna, on the backs of their existing people, they're just saying, well, now we expect a 3x, a 5x, a 10x productivity increase out of you, and that's going to be very demoralizing. And so I think there's a threading of the needle here in terms of how organizations use these tools to empower their people. But there's a contract with people still where they're still people, where I think they will be able to do more creative things. They will be able to do the things that they like more, and that value proposition will shift. But 24 months out, 3 years out, 5 years out, AI is very democratizing technology. And so you really won't be able to charge a value premium for certain services in the industry over time, because everyone else will also be doing that. And you'll get a request for a proposal that's saying, hey, like you need to disclose what percentage of this contract is autonomous labor or autonomous generative stuff. And there may be some companies say, I don't want to work with a company who's not using 100% human labor. And we saw this with the screenwriters, like negotiating that into their contracts. Like, hey, like the answer is no, right? And but to some extent, I think that's a losing battle.
That's a delay in tactic.
Yeah, it's just a delay, right? And so, and a lot of organizations are trying to like grab those assurances now because they see what's coming. But I think that's probably not a winning strategy over the long term. I think the strategy is really like, what makes you a great firm? What do your people want to do? How do they want to add value? and keeping a pulse on that, and then just aggressively helping your people train and prepare and understand what's coming. Because the AEC industry, the architectural engineering industry, like Matthew was mentioning, like there's going to be generative solutions that allow you to go from concept art to fully designed 3D AutoCAD, literally ready to build. And there will be autonomous construction companies that are operated by
robots,
teenagers and AI with like VR headsets anywhere in the world. They can just build this thing. Like that's probably 5 years out. So it's like that's a huge percentage of GDP in countries, and that's a honeypot for investment, and that's there's definitely going to be a change in the value proposition of human labor, and I think every organization really needs to think strategically about that. So.
Yeah, one of the ways it's a big question is like there's going to be massive returns to capital. The question of those returns going to be more evenly distributed, less evenly distributed than returns to capital are currently distributed, right? We have in the West like a capitalist innovation economy. There are, you could become a billionaire unicorn. We already have extreme inequality, right? The question is this going to hypercharge that, or is this going to provide a way to democratize access to effective intellectual capital, social capital that right now is like locked up? Like you have to go through, the Ivy League sort of ladder if you want to get that Goldman Sachs job, or you want to get that, premier high reward position in society. And do these tools just democratize the ability to accumulate intellectual and social capital and allow anyone to effectively come up with $1 billion idea, right? So there's an optimistic case that by decentralizing the ability to sort of generate an effective business from an idea, and you don't need to have access to the right social networks and VC funding and, all the specialized training that you only could get if you get accepted into certain elite institutions. If that truly does get democratized, then it could be quite, positive, right, in terms of the distribution of those returns. You could also imagine where everyone just becomes effectively serfs on like a handful of these walled gardens, and you're just paying rent to the people who own the computers, who own these foundation models. Potentially version what we have now, right, where like you're providing value on various platforms. Your attention is being monetized. And most, corporations are, just functions of trying to extract as much value out of labor without giving them proper returns as possible, right? That's like the basic incentive structure. And the AI value chain, as it's evolving, kind of goes from like the hardware layer, right? Like NVIDIA, AMD, like the companies that are developing like the most advanced chips, right? They're getting a lot of state funding, right? Because the countries know this is like strategic technology. So, industrial policy is back again. CHIPS Act 2 is probably coming. And then there's going to be like, everyone needs to onshore their own sovereign AI, enabled data center capabilities. Then you have the kind of model layer, right? So the people that are arms racing to get to the, frontier of, the science of large language model development. Then you have like the cloud infrastructure layer, right? Like Microsoft, like who's going to deliver this to enterprises? Who's going to deliver this to customers? And you have like the application layer, like who's going to develop these applications? Who's going to, whether enterprise applications or just, startup ideas. And then there's going to be the end users, right? It's like an inverted pyramid, right? So the end users are everyone else who's going to be interacting with this whole value stack. And so the question is, how does that value stack actually evolve in terms of distributing the returns on capital at each point? Do we live in a utopia where like everyone is autonomous, free, creative, UBI, et cetera? Or do we live in a world where we're all just digital serfs in a neo-feudalistic technocracy? I could see either way, either one playing out.
I don't know if I like either of them really.
Yeah, but it could just be baked in.
UBI versus serf.
I think you're gonna have to have something like UBI.
It's like slavery versus communism.
Yeah, I mean, because if you people need something,
of course,
to do. Otherwise, you're going to get riots, and then whatever comes out of that is going to be something.
But even the last conversation I heard about UBI was, I think it was Rogan. Some guy was talking about saying, look, the truck drivers are eventually going to be replaced by autonomous drivers. But and I can't remember who's having the conversation with this. He was talking about having UBI to, so the truck drivers, can go and flourish and go and be artists or whatever it is they want to be. But these truck drivers are on $70,000 a year, and they're talking about giving them $12,000. I was like, you can't fucking live on that.
Well, I actually think the form of UBI we're going to head to is not going to be cash UBI. It's going to be like hedonic UBI. It's going to be, you're going to be able to meet bare subsistence, food, power for your home, right? But we're going to have very effective augmented reality and virtual reality entertainment experiences that people are going to want to exist in. So like that truck driver, it might just be a mass of society.
Hold on.
That just permanently retreats into sort of.
This is the Matrix.
Hold on.
Well, not like plugged in, like a full simulated, like live in the pod, plug into the Matrix kind of thing. I think it'll just be like more like Ready Player One, but like.
So here's your
Wall-E or
electricity, here's your
something like
subsistence. Your meat space well sucks because you haven't got a lot of money. But if you go in here, you can be like a rock star or a footballer. And
That seems like the trajectory we're on.
Fuck that.
I mean, think about
pretty
like, cool. Hey, look.
But this is the thing. This is the radically different. People see that and be like, "That's terrible." Other people be like, "Fuck it," right? Like that's great,
what
right?
people say, yeah.
Are you telling me if you had the chance to go in there and you could go and play for Man U and it feels like you're actually playing for Man U and you're scoring the goal that wins the league, you go, nah, I'm not going to do that. That sounds shit.
I'm not living in the pod.
I'm not saying living in the pod, just going in and having some fun in the pod.
I mean, no, thank God for Bitcoin in this situation. I want to live in the real world.
Yeah, I mean, I think
It's like the philosophical theory of like if you can go into this pod and you live your
It's
life.
not a pod. It's a pod. The pod is misleading. I'm saying entertainment.
I want to live in the real world. Is my
Yeah, but I'm
answer.
not saying you're living in there.
Yeah, but I think people will.
Yeah, some people will, but
some people already do.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
I've played the boxing game with my Meta Quest, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and it's cool. I've walked on the plank off the building, and it's interesting. And like people will go, kids will a lot.
And if you see the like the interview that Lex Friedman did with Mark Zuckerberg, right? Like they're developing hyper realistic augmented reality, virtual reality.
Everyone's just going to go there and be fucking and watching porn.
Yeah,
it's all going to be porn.
Yeah, but like people like porn, and that's gonna like you're asking about UBIs. Like fundamentally, like money is a form is a substitute for any consumption good, right? Like because you can't barter, efficiently. You use a unit of account, right? That's a medium of exchange. But if you actually can effectively distribute, the goods, in this sense, virtual goods at scale that are extremely desirable and pleasurable and what people just learn to want and desire, then the function of money starts to become less relevant in those systems, because then you're just gifting the hedonic reward directly from the engagement with those digital systems, and they're effectively costless, right? They're just the hardware, infrastructure, et cetera, that could be subsidized by the government. And that's an easy way to like diffuse popular discontent and people rioting and whatever. Just give them a really pleasurable exit valve.
But it's like selling dopamine and telling them it's happiness.
Yeah, it's Aldous Huxley versus 1984, right? This is the classic, like in the literature is it going to be like everyone is on soma, is drugged up, and is just kind of drifting through in some sort of psychological.
Huxley was better than 1984.
Yeah, and I think he was more accurate, right? Like because it's a much more efficient way to have a kind of more inverted totalitarianism, where it doesn't look like an oppressive boot of the state. It's just a naturally pleasurable system of compliance and docility that just gets instilled in society. And that just might be inevitable where human technological civilization is going. We just become less like primates and we become more just like Borg-like machines.
How's it different from doing mushrooms?
I can't think that question through. I don't know the answer to that.
No, but that's one thing is, how's it different from doing mushrooms?
Well, because that's like an introspective thing where you're going into your own brain, isn't it?
But you're still going into your own brain.
I
So
don't know
your
the
brain
answer
is
to that.
your
I don't
brain.
know how to even dissect that. I don't know.
Yeah. And so you could have the mushroom version of it where it's like just random. So rather than you saying, I want to play for Man U, give me something fucking random. Give me random.
Yeah, but it's not going to be that. It's going to be porn.
It's going to be porn. It's all going to be porn. Women.
It always has been.
This is not good for women.
No.
Or men.
Or men.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to
good
be
for some
good or bad for. And I think our normative frameworks are going to rapidly evolve, right? And I think there's going to be a bifurcation of people that just resist it viscerally, and there's going to be people that just jump into it at the first chance they get and never leave. And then this is just going to be
Never leave. So while they're there, what they could do is plug something in the back of their neck, use them as an energy source.
Well, what you're seeing, I mean, it's interesting if you look at like Neuralink and like even Sam Altman was talking on Joe Rogan the other day, is like they're investing in technologies that are like primitive mind reading devices that then also provide a feedback loop. Like their ideas, the LMs are a very powerful sort of general purpose technology. And if you can harness it in a certain specialized domain, for example, detecting, with a there's an invasive version of this, which is the Neuralink one, but there's like the non-invasive version, which I think is much more like user-friendly to a certain extent, much more widely to be adopted quickly, is essentially a fMRI that you can miniaturize, put on your head, and then you have a really sophisticated AI that's built in that can sort of parse all and modulate all the different brain activity, and then interpret that, essentially read your thoughts. Right? This is on the drawing board of these big tech companies right now. And then they want to integrate that with the hyper-realistic simulation, VR and AR. And that is, you can imagine that being a really visceral, you just sit there. Right? You just need to have, you just had the tubes.
We're going to get every film we've seen. I'm like wondering what's the order. So we're going to get Her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then we're going to get Ready Player One.
Yeah.
Even the Black Mirror episode where they go to that island or whatever it is.
Yeah. Then we're going to get Matrix, and then we're going to get Terminator 2. That's it. That's the order.
I mean, it could happen. Yeah. I mean, this is where the capital is going.
Yeah. I mean, on the Terminator 2 spot, like I'd love to unpack the Optimus program that they're building at Tesla. Have you seen
What's this?
Optimus, like Optimus Prime.
It's ridiculous.
You pull this up. So
Yeah.
I'm not even joking. So a couple weeks ago,
This is Tesla, do you say?
Yeah, Tesla, right? Like, so
Is it a robot?
Oh, I have
Is
seen
it a
this.
robot
Pull
truck?
this up. Yeah,
No, it's a humanoid.
So a
robot.
couple weeks ago, they released a couple videos. Yeah. Pull up the one where it's doing yoga. Is this?
Hold on. Didn't they use the music from? Like it was a bit of a troll. They used the music from. Oh, what's that film with the robot?
Just add the word yoga there. And
What's the film with the robot with the tech guys living out in? Oh, what is it?
Watch this. Okay.
Yeah, it's the music from that film.
Yeah. So it's self-calibrating here using purely visual AI. So it has all these data points, and then look at this. So imagine this guy in an automobile factory. Right?
This is all real.
This is all real time. Look at this. And it's not programmed to do this. It's given the instruction, sort the blocks, and then it decides how to do that using everything in what you see.
You missed iRobot from your film list.
Yeah, watch this. Okay, so
Shit.
this is effectively 1 year of development. So if you saw the Tesla event earlier this year, this robot could like not even walk on stage, right? And this is like less than 8 months of progress is what you see here, and this robot they're targeting to essentially reduce Tesla's manufacturing. Look at this, Tesla's manufacturing cost by half. So
And imagine you can make if the geopolitical implications, right? Tesla has massive factories in China. China has a demographic problem.
yeah,
Everyone's saying that's trying to collapse. Imagine by 2030. Tesla is making 100 million of these in China.
That's the music from Ex Machina.
yeah,
That is such a troll.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah.
But you can see where these things are converging, and they have massive military implications. They have massive implications for those folks in the Midlands that are basically just, biomechanical, labor, right? So that is going to be.
We need to put the creator in the mix as well, because there's that bit in the creator where the humans are fighting the robot, but they're fighting those.
Yeah.
I mean, the military is aggressively positioning for an entirely drone workforce, right? Or drone armies, right? Drone air force.
They kind of have a large drone air force right now, but they're operated by
they're
guys who
operated
sit
in the desert.
Yeah.
basically.
I mean, the what's called NGAD, the Next Generation Air Dominance Program, is basically going to be like one manned advanced next generation fighter, but with large number of autonomous wingmen, and they can do dynamic adjustments to target.
Cool,
But that was basically a compromise to the legacy egos of the fighter jockeys that they would still be in charge. But the plan is if that guy's plane gets shot down, the rest of the swarm can do what it needs to do. He's just there to kind of get his medals until they phase out the fighter training programs. But yeah, they this is the way wars are going to be fought. They're already being fought like this. Like if you look at Ukraine war, it's all drones and semi-autonomous targeting. I mean, several years ago I was doing assessments of counter UAS systems, and even then you could use commercial off-the-shelf components with machine vision and be like, hey, look for this type of vehicle, fly in this area until you see it, and then crash into it with a little explosive attached to it. So essentially like a loitering munition, right? that can precisely target a particular object that it's coded to recognize. Like that existed. Like you could just buy and build that off the shelf, right?
Kamikaze drones.
Yeah. But like imagine, but now it's like scaling that and, doing that instead of like one-offs, doing that hundreds of thousands.
But it's so fucked because the future's literally coming to us.
Yeah, this is like a year of development.
But the future's coming to us. Everything that looked like it would be out of our lifetime, decades away, we're possibly going to live through.
Yeah.
And there's
This decade.
and every scenario is possible. I'm a little bit fearful.
Well,
I'm also optimistic because like I'm seeing the productivity increases we're getting. I'm thinking, great.
You want to get in the pod.
No. If the government tax me less, I can invest more money that I make from being productive into new businesses. I like building businesses. I love that side of things. I just know there are psychos out there and greedy people and fucking dicks who are going to use this to exploit people. And it just feels like these films, they always seem to predict the future correctly.
Well, think about our need to onshore manufacturing in an intensifying geopolitical environment where you have these Optimus robots essentially able, using visual learning, literally to watch an employee do a task and then do it perfectly for 24 hours a day. Tag team, another robot that comes, takes the job over, it goes and recharges, right? And you have like fully autonomous manufacturing for anything. That's going to be important when we look at supply chains, like shortening supply chains, which we're already trying to do. And you can imagine the brokering that will happen congressionally on this, because like this is terrifying. Like how many jobs you're going to, you see the UAW strike. It's like, how do you like placate that? Well, it's like, hey, well, you know what? These companies are going to be insanely profitable and insanely productive, way more than they are already. And so I see a situation in the not too distant future where you have a negotiation that goes something like, well, for autonomous labor or revenue that is produced as a result of autonomous labor or AI systems, we're going to tax that at a different rate. And you need to have an accountability structure in your organization to track, audit, and report on this. And then we're going to tax that at a much higher rate. And the corporations won't care because it's already substantially better than their human labor experience.
Well, they will care. I mean, Amazon has proved that they want preferential tax rates, even though they're ultra profitable.
Well, and of course there'll be a jockey.
They don't need a 401k. They don't need benefits.
Yeah, they don't need. Yeah, so
they need
so their costs are going to be substantially less. And these Optimus robots, Musk was on stage saying he's targeting like a $20,000 price tag on these, right? And so they also repair themselves, right? Like they're modular. So. You were talking about Terminator, like, well,
that is the key,
one,
right? Like right now, it's humans making these machines.
Yeah.
Version 2 is machines making the machines.
Yeah.
That is when you get,
Make it kill the human.
Well, that's where like the returns. So this is where it's an amplification of human capabilities, and therefore also amplification of human intents alongside that. Yeah. So we haven't talked about the biotech threat, but actually that's probably the most near-term strategic threat to.
Is it AI and CRISPR?
Yeah. Basically. Yeah. And I think that's, Anthropic basically, which is, one of the leading kind of safety research organizations is at the foundation model development side of things. And they're also, like the head of that, pays a lot of attention to what physicists were thinking and writing and doing in the Manhattan Project, what were sort of the ethical quandaries of that. He's become pretty close to the U.S. intelligence community because he doesn't want there to be any strategic surprises that spill out of this. So for example, they did a project, very secret, like 6 months of intensive study where they brought in like the leading experts on like how to design and develop bioweapons of various kinds. And they wanted to see, with access to Anthropic's internal model capabilities, like how far away would it be for someone to just basically prompt themselves to get all the detailed instructions of like how to design a bioweapon, right? And both from the basic science, the laboratory infrastructure that you would need to buy, how you would need to set it up, the precise laboratory protocols. And what they found was that there are a few key like niche specialized pieces of knowledge that the model didn't have that are like you only get by basically working in these labs for 10, 20 years, and they're not really in many textbooks, but they're pretty close to like interpolating between that and like accumulating that sort of expertise internally because they have access to all the textbooks and all the experimental results and all the papers, et cetera. They don't have access to these classified studies or that sort of intangible expert knowledge. But he was like, maybe it's 2 to 3 years away. Like the ability, they went back and sort of did the same analysis of the models, like the lagging models for the past few years. And they're like how quickly did they close those gaps of like those, like niche, those key critical skills and pieces of knowledge. And they were closing them at a rate that looked like they would close all of those gaps in the next 2 to 3 years, roughly, with big error bars. So that is like a very worrying, strategic concern for the U.S. intelligence community, national security across the world. Is like lots of crazy people out there right now. There's a high bar to like get access to the right knowledge and equipment and infrastructure and ways to do this. And you can ask Google like how to build a bioweapon, like whatever. But like there's a long way between that and actually being able to do it and getting like the precise step-by-step instructions that if you wanted to, 1 or 2 people could follow to create something very destructive. So that is one of the focus areas of intelligence community now, is like, how do you mitigate that, right? Like, how do you ensure that whatever model you release doesn't enable that type of thing, right?
Well, you get in the pod.
But this is where there's a slippery slope, right? In terms of like, if these models become so ubiquitous in, across the economy, across social media, across everyone's, but they require like a much more intensive regime of effective censorship, right? They require censorship of the bad things we definitely all agree on. There's like a sliding scale of like bioweapons, most horrible things you could imagine. Everyone universally agrees those things should be censored, right? Especially if they pose a risk to my family and my home, right? Like definitely block that. But that capability to do that is the same capability that could be leveraged to, impose a much more sweeping, like Chinese style CCP social surveillance and control system, right? And so this is going to become a very intensive part of discussion, as we're sort of trying to address the safety questions. How do we ensure that the basic premise of liberal democracy and freedom of expression, survives, right? That's going to be a big challenge.
So we want to avoid AI connected to CBDC.
That's what China's trying to do.
Yeah,
right?
But is that where
Connected to
like
your
Bitcoin
body.
is like the open free protocols are like uniquely positioned? Because presumably there's going to be a whole mesh of AI that you have to interact with, and AI interacting with other AI. So it needs like open payments and communication. And so things like Nostr and Bitcoin, presumably they're very uniquely set.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to speak to this from a micropayments perspective, right? Like obviously you got all of these agents, some one chat dev company needs to talk to another chat dev. They're going to outsource components to humans. Like, hey, the chat dev is like, hey, I need to, go to the store. I need to buy this thing, or in the physical meet space, right? And then like, hey, I need to pay that person, right? Like Bitcoin's kind of a great tool for that. And what I think is interesting, and you mentioned this a little earlier about just like high performance computing, or just like AI models competing with Bitcoin from an energy perspective. And like I see a solution in the not too distant future where you have high performance computing modules, containerized high performance computing, where these things are side by side, and the Bitcoin nodes and the Bitcoin networks are validating peer-to-peer transactions between these AI high performance computing chips, literally in the same shipping container. And obviously from a security perspective, you can gate that and that sort of thing. But like that's going to be the I think interesting marriage between these technologies where you blur the lines between Bitcoin mining and AI processing, and you just say, hey, high performance computing. And you see the World Economic Forum already putting like videos out to this effect, saying, hey, this is all like decentralized compute. Like,
so is this positive then for Bitcoin?
Well, I
in
think
the integration of the two data centers.
Well, I think it's going to be very interesting because decentralized high performance compute has a similar value proposition as Bitcoin, in that you have a buyer of stranded energy. You have a buyer that can kind of check jobs in and out from a command server, essentially. Maybe you check out a job, it's doing the computation activity, and some things are challenging from a bandwidth perspective, like image generation and like continuous video and that sort of thing. But there's going to be lots of jobs that can be easily checked out in these high performance computing modules. And just I don't know, do you remember SETI at home, where you could like use your home computer to process like signals from aliens?
I did it. I was a super nerd.
Yeah, same. So I ran it as well.
Definitely knows.
Yeah, we both ran it, I'm sure. But so you use like spare compute in your laptop or your desktop to like process radio signals from space. And this is kind of a similar process. Like you'd check out a package, you'd compute it locally, and then when you're done, you'd upload the results. Hey, did you find anything interesting? No. Okay. Yes. And if so, what? And then you'd upload those. The same thing will happen with high performance computing, where you have a buyer of that energy who's maybe willing to pay more than the Bitcoin miner, right? So if you have a stranded energy asset like hydro or curtailed wind or solar, or you have a flared methane or a vented methane, you're going to locate these high performance computing models next to those stranded energy sources, and you're going to have a power purchasing agreement between those entities. And you're going to say, hey, should we put in a battery? Should we spend it on AI? Should we spend it on that energy? Should we spend that on Bitcoin mining, or should we sell it back to the grid? And you have this software that kind of regulates this, like who's the buyer of that energy at any given time. High performance compute can spin down, Bitcoin can spin down. It's all managed with software in that mobile containing unit. So I see a blurring of the lines with these technologies that's coming hard and fast, where they're going to be, Bitcoin can kind of like hook the tailwind that's happening in that space. And
it's happening already. I mean, look, our sponsor Iris Energy just bought how many?
About $10 million worth of
NVIDIA GPUs.
Yeah,
and that's happening already.
But what said that companies like Iris are in a unique position for a couple of reasons. The first one is they're used to building high performance data centers using curtailed energy.
Yeah.
But even more so is a lot of these traditional data centers are built close to cities.
Yeah.
Because they need to be. But Bitcoin miners, they can be out on the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And so there's a more cost efficient route to building these data centers.
But I was just going to say on the decentralized point, because this is going to be like similar to the Bitcoin kind of ethos of like self-sovereignty, right? Is the question of how much, what's the path of adoption of these technologies, right? You can imagine on one extreme, there's a guy actually super smart, I forget his name, but he's developing something called like the tiny box. And the idea is that he wants to basically try to give anyone the ability to essentially run their own model, right? Like run their own inference at home, right? Because right now, if you're using ChatGPT, like you're giving up all the data, all the queries, you're helping them improve their latest models. That's a natural centralizing force, where it's going to be a handful of companies that have the most advanced capabilities, and everyone just essentially rents access to those servers, whether they're distributed around the country geographically, but they're effectively their ownership and the data is all centralized. Or a model where everyone, just like everyone can run a node at home, could you run your own inference at home, where you're not sending your prompts or your queries or whatever business plans that you have to some centralized server that's can be monitored and exploited by a third party. You have a self-sovereign data, AI, inference stack that is capable of being run at home. You can plug it into the outlet, right? It's very power efficient. It's maybe not going to be the same thing as like running, a massive data center in the middle of, that has an offtake agreement or whatever. But like that is a direction of, you could imagine this decentralizing force where everyone can, and this is where it's kind of like data is going to be critical, right?
That's already happening with Llama GPT, I think.
Yeah, but it's a matter of user friendliness, right?
It's not,
for example, like
plug and play.
Like anyone can set up their own email server, but no one does because Gmail is so efficient and easy to sign up for. So no one, and it's expensive. It's like people can do it, but it's like, it's frictionless to just use Gmail, right? But now Gmail reads and scans all your emails, right? Most people are good with that. But like, are we going to go down that path where it's not just reading and scanning your emails? It's effectively pretty much everything about your digital life is going to be intermediated through these different AI systems and platforms, and that potentially poses a risk, right? To now you really are a digital serf, right? You are paying rent. Maybe you get like a really great life. Maybe it's really rewarding and highly productive, but effectively, right? Like your autonomy as an individual is conditioned by some third parties' terms of service, right? So there's a push. I think that this guy Tinybox. He's trying to create the kind of techno stack that like at least helps create another option, so someone can basically do their own run their own inference at home. And I think you're going to need something like that, and I think that's like that does keep with kind of the Bitcoin ethos of like not trying to be too beholden to a third party for these fundamental aspects of your life.
Well, so Fred Thiel talked about this on stage yesterday. About how there's going to be a democratization in homes and businesses where like you're already spending electricity to heat your establishment, to heat water, to imagine a situation in the not too distant future where you go to buy a water heater, right? And it's like a heat pump water heater that has a like distributed compute component. Like, okay, maybe a regular water heater is $1,500 and like this one is, $6,000, but like you mine Bitcoin with it, like, like it streams sats into your wallet, from your compute, like the AI node in that particular water heater, like uses the Bitcoin node and then just streams sats into your wallet and like, and pays for itself in like, 36 months or something like that, like, or a clothes dryer or an HVAC unit. Like these things are going to absolutely come because people are already spending the money to do those activities. Like why not get money back? Like why not have an ROI on that appliance? Like, and there are people building these things right now. And so I think there is going to be a democratization across businesses and industry and homes where they have these devices that are pretty turnkey. They're auto patched. There's a service contract, like you had mentioned, where they offer these services. But there are going to be things at scale as well. Last year at Bitcoin Miami, there's a dam in Paraguay, and
Penguin.
Yeah. And they were like, hey, we have literally hundreds of megawatts of available power where literally it's just flowing over the dam. And you see this with stranded energy assets in the Middle East as well, and with Oman and Saudi Arabia, where they're like, hey, let's monetize these assets, and AI and Bitcoin are both like perfect use cases for that. So
Right, I'm conscious you've got a hard stop coming up, and there's going to be some very patient people listening going, update us on aliens, Matt. What's going on with aliens? Is there anything since we made what aliens did that you can update us on? Anything at all?
Well, we actually had quite a fortuitous day of recording, because the day that we recorded was the day that Senator Schumer, the majority leader in the Senate, introduced into the National Defense Authorization Act and Intelligence Authorization Act for FY24, a act called the UAP Disclosure Act. And that is like the most significant official legislative proposal that would, push us on a particular trajectory of, as the title of the act says, UAP disclosure. Where we are right now is that was passed out of the Senate, voted like 86-14 or something. Now they have to negotiate with the House to create a combined National Defense Authorization Act that they'll send to the president. Obviously,
the game theory of this legislation is brilliant because everyone's voting is like, yeah, I want to fucking know.
Yeah, I mean, although we have to deal with the fact that the House doesn't have a speaker, and so the whole legislative calendar is kind of a little bit derailed, and there's going to be maybe the government shutdown in 45 days. But they're trying to work out in conference committee, which of these provisions is going to survive, and then eventually make it into law, maybe by Christmas. So I expect most of those provisions to come through. There's, you read the bill. One recommendation to anyone reading this that's like wants to just get a hard factual basis for somebody to get their grip around this topic is just read the 64 pages. They have very specific definitions of eye-opening terms. Like they define non-human intelligence, they define technologies of unknown origin, they define UAPs, they define legacy programs, and they provide a whole bunch of like motivating sort of preface material, which is like in order to legislation is necessary because, for example, there's credible evidence and testimony indicates that, for example, UAP records have been inappropriately classified under transclassified foreign nuclear information (TFNI). That the allegations that some of this information was illicitly or illegally or inappropriately classified under Atomic Energy Act secrets provisions. And this is a statement by the Senate saying we have credible evidence and testimony. So this is going to move forward. I think maybe there's some provisions that make it a little extra attention. For example, there's a I think extreme debate happening right now over the eminent domain provisions. One of the last provisions in the law says the federal government basically will claim eminent domain over any non-human intelligence biologic materials or technologies of unknown origin that are alleged to be in private hands. And that is currently, it's very broadly written. So I think there's some debate over how constitutional that is, but like that's a big debating sticking point that aerospace companies that may or may not have some of these materials don't want to just have it be seized by the government. And yeah, so that's like a big point of contention.
Well, hold on. So aerospace companies, private companies might have some of these UAPs.
Lockheed.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a highly likely scenario. Yeah.
How would they have come across these?
This goes back to like the 50s and 60s when, it was maybe given over to them to
reverse engineer,
to keep it also off the books of the government. So Freedom of Information Act, or there'd be no official record of these things existing inside the government. Yeah.
The government want their toys back.
Well, so the core allegation between David Grush and testimony that's been given to the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and alluded to by statements by Senator Marco Rubio, Jill Lebrand, other political leaders is that, there are these legacy programs. They call them legacy programs in the bill, and they define these programs. And they explicitly define a UAP records review board. And one of the key conditions of being nominated to serve on that board is you cannot have had any association with those legacy programs. The legacy programs meaning programs covered under, maybe legal, legit special access programs, but maybe inappropriately or illegally diverting funds to support these crash retrieval and reverse engineering program activities. This is stuff that's some private facility. So that's one track is the legislative track. And then there is a whole bunch of stuff happening on like just the whistleblower track. So there's been reporting that many other folks in the intelligence community and the Department of Defense have gone to the Senate, in particular the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, and given extensive on-record testimony in sensitive compartmentalized information facilities with the general counsel of the SSCI, transcribers, video cameras, dozens of whistleblowers, and they're going through the official PPD-19 Intelligence Committee whistleblower process to report this. And so this is...
Are there any whistleblowers who are actually claiming to have seen anything, or is it whistleblowers say, I know of something?
First-hand witnesses.
First-hand witnesses.
Yeah, and first-hand people working on these programs, touching materials. Yeah. I mean, again, that's what's been reported, and that's what I've heard privately. I have, again, that's like second order, right? I haven't physically touched those things.
But it's either a giant, well-executed psyop, or we're going to fucking find out about aliens.
I mean, this gets to our last conversation, and also the AI conversation, which is, really speculative, right? But I think it's interesting is LLMs are just really good pattern recognition, decoding, translation engines, right? If language is the universal interface, LLMs are the universal translator. And there's already been some papers looking at how to basically decode and translate whale song and dolphin song. And if you get to the point enough, you have enough of a dictionary and a transcription system to, get enough data from these whale songs, you could talk to whales. This is not this is an engineering challenge.
Fuck the
right?
whales, we want to talk to the aliens.
Well,
it's a rival.
Non-human intelligence, right? Non-human
that,
intelligence, right? All lots of non-human intelligences communicate. Even normal, terrestrial non-human intelligences have certain patterns of communication. LLMs would be really good at helping decipher and maybe develop translation for those. We already have really effective AI translation for human languages. This would be a natural technology you would use to engage with any other arbitrary communication system or pattern of language that may be non-Earth origin. So that would be an interesting additional use case for AI potentially.
So AI,
and now we have
alien.
And now we have Up, with the dog.
So what have we? So we need some other films in our stack. What alien films do we need?
Arrival.
Arrival's a good one. Maybe Independence Day.
Yeah.
It makes me think of that bit. Do you remember the bit in Independence Day? They're like, oh yeah, here's the secret program. Here's the ship we have, and they actually show him the ship. Didn't they actually have aliens in
Yeah, they
them
had
as well?
bio.
They had bio. Yeah.
But I would just say the last point of we're heading into 2024. It's going to be
It's a busy year.
It's going to be a busy year, right? We've got a lot of stuff
halving.
happening.
Oh my gosh.
There's going to be a lot of stuff happening. And obviously,
12 black swans already in the
presidential
cards.
election in November, right? I think that there's interesting, more tangible concern on the part of the U.S. government that, if OpenAI or one of these foundation model labs releases another step function change, new capability in the wild, in the summer of 2024, and now you got this a wild card in terms of just the epistemic environment, right? Or just acute anxiety leading into what is already going to be very fraught presidential election. This UAP thing is also going to be on a similar trajectory. If they pass this bill, it sets up a bunch of clocks for the establishment of this review board, the nominations of its members by Biden. It's a 300-day clock for a first official potential release of materials, which would be just around the presidential election as well. So you're seeing a lot of just weird stuff, right? A lot of weird things.
Convergence.
And I have make no predictions, but I think there's an attempt to try to do things in an orderly fashion, right? So that we don't get disruption from any of these things, whether it's the UAP disclosure, whether it's just rapid development of AI capabilities. It's just my biggest takeaway is just our political and social systems may not be well adapted to the pace of these things. And it's okay, how do you do this in a responsible fashion? How do you keep things from spiraling.
Getting to live through all of this makes me actually think we're just in a simulation now.
Well,
Like how
it's-
lucky,
yeah.
if you look at the entire trajectory of the universe and what actually had to happen for Earth to get created, and then for biology to spark, for us to exist, and then exist at this moment in time, I think we're in a simulation.
I mean, it was interesting. I have the whole simulation thing as a separate podcast, but like
We will do that one day,
If you
Matt.
were a civilization that, say like you went through some catastrophe, but you're already at some high level of capability, right? But maybe there's like only some of you left, but you have a really high capability. Which part of your ancestry would you want to simulate? You'd want to simulate the period just up until the point where you hit that disaster, you hit that critical inflection point, to like just examine,
A/B test it.
Yeah, A/B test it, right? So you'd be like, let's start the clock basically now. Let's give humanity, the AI stuff, whatever, the alien stuff, right? Let's have it all come in, right? And then let's see what happens, and then rerun it, right? I don't know. I have other metaphysical ontological challenges with the simulation hypothesis. This great book by David Chalmers called Reality Plus, which kind of gets into the weeds of like how can you ontologically even distinguish between a simulation and it's like base reality? But that's a separate conversation. But yeah, I think it's very fascinating to think about. We are in a very interesting time in humanity, right? So that could just be luck, right? Like or unluck, depending on how you view it.
Providence.
Yeah. Or it's just this is
it.
This is where you would expect to simulate if you were simulating, because you simulate the interesting parts.
Okay, we'll do simulation theory next time. Matthew Pines, I love making shows with you. I think we could do a Match Pine show every week, just a different subject. Chester, it's great to have you on the show, man. I really appreciate
It's a pleasure.
having you as a friend first, and the surprise having you on the show today. I don't know when we'll see you next, but wild. You got anything? I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I think we covered it.
Yeah. Let's go do some mushrooms.
Good luck.